but against that as an investment product. Is it coming back? I mean, is it here to stay?
I think in the long run it is here to stay. When we look at where markets are, I think maybe it's not at the forefront of investors' minds like it was before. They're more concerned with generating returns, generating yields, reducing volatility in their portfolio.
Those things should be aligned, though, right?
Yeah, and the thing is, actually, in reality, they are. So I think that what we're seeing more and more is that clients start to use, especially that governance piece in ESG for risk reduction, for drawdown reduction. So it's good. It's funny because actually we were just talking about this. The due diligence sessions that we do with some of the largest investors globally, beforehand ESG would be like a little 10-minute segment in that kind of one-day agenda, and now it's intrinsic in pretty much all of the different segments.
Hear the full conversation of this hit podcast. Anywhere else you get your You're listening to Bloomberg on Bloomberg Radio.
We'll be here each and every week at this time, tapping into our Bloomberg Intelligence analysts covering some 2,000 companies and 130 industries worldwide.
So part of the bank fallout that we saw in March was volatility in Treasury yields. So let's take a look at how all of that impacted the mortgage-backed security market. They sharply underperformed Treasuries in March and messed with volatility across asset classes. Bloomberg Intelligence mortgage-backed security strategist Erica Adelberg joins us now. All right, Erica, give us the performance stats for MBSs in March in relation to, say, Treasuries, etc. Mortgage-backed securities in March fell over 100 basis points. I think the total was 111 basis points, 1.11% relative to Treasuries. And that makes it the worst March, I think, on record. It doesn't compare to how bad mortgages did in September, but otherwise it's really right up there as one of the worst months versus Treasuries that they've had. And as you said, it really relates to the fact that there's a lot of volatility, both structurally in the market, but just in terms of Treasury yields, uncertainty. I mean, all these things create more volatility and more risk for mortgages.
More than a little bit going forward.
High volatility, in particular, rise more than it should have. Yes, there was a very short-term panic, and actually mortgages have come back quite a bit. So right now, I think that volatility, as measured by like the MOVE index, has actually come down more than mortgage trends. So mortgages actually look a little bit cheap right now relative to how, on our models, relative to how much volatility has followed. The question is volatility being overly optimistic, falling this quickly? Is there another shoe that's going to drop? Are mortgages the smart ones here? Or are mortgage investors just being very risk averse? I mean, hopefully it's that mortgage investors are being risk averse. There is one extra... That's a good point, though, just before we move on. But, the widening started happening in February, right? That was before the SVB crisis. So how much of this is also just the Fed and their quantitative tightening policy? And then, some aspects that I think that definitely is contributing, at least in part, because, in the past few years, if mortgages have hit this kind of lack of investor interest because risk is widened or risk is risen, then in that case, the Fed might come in and buy, as they always did, whatever amount they're selling and buying. So they would, the buyer's last resort, mortgages didn't really have to worry about volatility and investors specifically. And they're not there right now. So that's part of it. And actually, volatility in the mortgage market has been a lot higher since they're pulling out of the market, much higher than before they even got in. So I think that the investor base has changed a little bit, and the investor base is a little bit more risk averse, especially with banks not being active participants as much in the market either.
All right, let's talk about supply of mortgages. Now, I want you to know I contributed to supply of mortgages. I closed on a property a couple of months ago, and I just found out that my loan originator pawned my loan off to some California banks, and I got to start paying those guys. Who knows what next step it'll do? It'll be sliced and diced into some security. Who knows how that game is played? But just talk to us about the supply out there.
Supply is the lightest it's been for a long time, and that is because the housing market turnover is very low. A lot of people who might even consider selling and moving are just sitting on their mortgages because they have this nice low rate and they don't want to move. So mortgage net supply was at about $3 billion total for the market, which is, I don't know, like a 30th of what it was, just a year ago. But also the amount of funds, the amount of new mortgages, that need to be absorbed by the market is pretty low. I mean, it's around 50 to 60 billion, which is among the lowest that it's been over the past several years, over the past 10 years. And that's even though each loan is actually larger. So in terms of number of loans coming to the market, it's really small. It's all related to extremely slow home sales and new purchases.
But things have seemed to turn around a bit, and that some of the housing data hasn't been as terrible. It feels like we've kind of maybe formed a bottom. Mortgage rates are well off their peaks that we've seen. Could there be some catch-up as we get into the spring season and some more supply coming on, or you just don't see it?
No, I definitely see it. In fact, this month already, just looking at the numbers, the prepayment and supply numbers come out at the end of this week, but looking at the preliminary numbers, they're already up, and that's a normal spring seasonal, but we're still well below. I think we're still probably, at the lowest level that we've been in 5 or 10 years. Even as we go up, we're going to be going up less than spring seasonals would imply. But there is a little bit of a lag between some of the housing numbers, especially things like pending and new home sale data that you might see, and when the supply actually comes into the market. And those are showing some green shoots legitimately. So that will pick up supply. It's just going to be much, much less than usual.
Let's run a recession scenario here. That can't be good for the mortgage market. How's the market pricing in a recession in your market?
My biggest concern with a recession is that I think, it increases the amount of uncertainty and it increases risk aversion of investors in general. So that, again, could push volatility up to higher levels. We've certainly seen that in most previous recessions, not all, but most previous recessions. On the right side, the tailwind you have is there's probably going to be even less home purchasing going on because people are going to be worried about their income, and so that could keep supply even lower. So in that case, it depends on which side wins out. In the short run, usually higher volatility, widened spreads. In the longer run, it could, at least there won't be as much supply for the market to have to absorb.
On a fundamental basis, where should spreads be versus where when there's too much frothiness and speculation and panic in the market?
That is such a good question because the Fed has been such a big player in the market for so long, as have banks, that it's hard to figure out what the long-term correct level is these days. I mean, that again, the marginal investors, really money managers and to some degree hedge funds, the mortgage market is much bigger than it used to be. So at what point, are spreads wide enough for those investors to want to own mortgages versus other assets? I mean, we were down at 60, 70 basis points to treasuries in 2021. We're currently almost 100 basis points wider than that. I think that we're pricing a lot of risk. I think the spread should probably be, closer to 100 to 125. So that's a significant amount of tightening. But it really depends. It's going to depend on what this different investor class now requires. And that's also going to depend on where other asset classes are priced.
If I own a big chunk of MBS and I call my buddies at Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs, are they going to bid me? Are they going to give me a good bid to buy my stuff?
I think it depends on the day.
That's honest answer.
Thank you so much, Erica. Really appreciate it. Erica Alberg of Bloomberg Intelligence MBS strategist.
Let's turn now to bank deposits and cash ETFs, where the inability of bank savings accounts to keep up with rising interest rates has led to a surge in assets. For more, please go welcome Bloomberg Intelligence exchange traded fund analyst Athanasios Sarafagis. Athanasios, thanks so much for joining us here. Talk to us about the ETF bank deposits. Kind of what are you seeing on the side of all this? Because there's a lot of concern in the financial markets.
Probably the biggest story this year in ETFs, which is, kind of a boring story, but short-term treasury cash-like ETFs are taking in some of the biggest chunks of the flows. About 20% of all the ETF flows that are coming in are going to one of these sort of cash-type ETFs. Now, I think it's important to note that they're not really money market funds. Those don't exist in ETF form, but they are competing with money market funds. A lot of the returns of these really short duration ETFs look very similar to like a Vanguard money market fund. So, while all that money is leading to bank deposits, a good chunk of it is finding its way towards ETFs.
How sticky is that money? Either if all of a sudden banks raise their deposit rates or there's a recession, how quickly is that money going to come out?
In the past, we've definitely seeing money come out if the market starts to rally again. But the difference was, and I think what's going to need to happen is the market is going to have to perform a lot better to get that money to get redeployed back to the market. Meaning, before you weren't earning 4.5% on that cash ETF. Now you are, right? So we even actually saw this in the past quarter. The S&P was up 7% in the quarter, yet equity flows were still really, really low, and these cash balances actually continue to go up. So I think you're going to have to really see some very significant outperformance in the equity markets to get that money to move out. Just because now you're competing with much higher rates.
Coming up on the program, we get more on the ETF space with Bloomberg Intelligence exchange-traded funds analyst Anastasios Sarafakis.
You're listening to Bloomberg Intelligence on Bloomberg Radio, providing in-depth research and data on 2,000 companies and 130 industries. You can access Bloomberg Intelligence through VIGO on the terminal. I'm Alex Steele.
And I'm Paul Sweeney, and this is Bloomberg.
Can't catch us live? Your favorite Bloomberg radio shows, including Bloomberg Surveillance, Wall Street Week, and Bloomberg Sound On, are also available as podcasts. Listen today on Apple, Spotify, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. World markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com and the Bloomberg Business app. This is Bloomberg 1130. Now, a global news update.
A federal judge in Washington is prohibiting the FDA from pulling a well-known abortion drug off the market. Here's Brad Siegel.
The Seattle Times says U.S. District Judge Thomas Rice of Spokane issued his ruling Friday in response to a multi-state lawsuit. The ruling will keep mifepristone available in those states, too, while the case proceeds.
The majority of Nashville council members say they'll vote to reinstate expelled state representative Justin Jones. Jones was expelled from the Tennessee House for protesting gun violence on the floor after the Nashville school shooting. One council member criticized the state house for not considering the 140,000 people who voted for Jones. An Ohio grand jury will meet Monday to consider possible charges in the fatal police shooting of a black man. Jalen Walker was shot and killed by Akron police last June after a traffic stop and car chase. The 8 officers who opened fire on Walker were placed on leave following the shooting, but were later reinstated. That's the latest. I'm Julie Ryan.
Now, your 3-day weather forecast on Bloomberg 1130.
Partly to mostly cloudy skies today, high getting up near 55. Looking ahead towards tonight, clearing, low down near 40. Tomorrow, sunny weather for the day, high up near 55. Tomorrow night, clear skies, low 40. And for Monday, plenty of sunshine, warmer, high near 65. That's your Bloomberg 3-day weather forecast. I'm Susanna Palmer. Now let's get a check of Bloomberg Sports.
At the Masters, Brooks Koepka entered the third round with a 2-stroke lead. Tiger Woods makes the cut. The Yankees continue their weekend series with the Orioles at Camden Yards. Johnny Brito faces Cole Irvin. The Mets and Marlins play the second of 3 at Citi Field. NFL media reports ex-Giants wide receiver Richie James has agreed to terms with the Kansas City Chiefs. He had 4 touchdown receptions last season. NHL, the Rangers skate in Columbus. The Islanders host the Flyers. And the Devils visit the Bruins. That's a Bloomberg Sports Update. I'm Joel Stern. Global market news changes in an instant, so don't miss a minute. Listen to Bloomberg 1130 anytime, anywhere around the world on the iHeartRadio app. Tune in, the Bloomberg Business app, and Bloomberg.com.
Europe is at the forefront of building a new economy. After a year of war, bottlenecks, and economic disarray, global leaders must work to meet opportunities and challenges facing the continent. On April 19th and 20th, Bloomberg New Economy will gather leaders of government and business in discussion around the most pressing issues facing the European economy: inflation, regulation, supply chain disruption, energy, and cryptocurrencies. Watch the event live from Ireland at BloombergNewEconomy.com. Data, analytics, technology, connected. Bloomberg's enterprise solutions integrate systems and workflows across your firm so you can increase transparency and maximize efficiency. Ready to seize opportunities? Start at Bloomberg.com/thinkbigger.
Dear Calvary Hospital, my father, Curtis Moore, is my hero. Now 96 years old, he has led an exceptional life of self-sacrifice. A Market Point Marine, a New York City detective, and a family man who cared for his children and grandchildren his entire life. So when other hospitals could no longer relieve his suffering or our family's emotional pain, we brought in Calvary's miraculous team of home hospice experts. Thanks to Calvary's doctors, nurses, and social workers, Dad was able to resume the quality of life he wanted and deserved, surrounded by the love of his entire family. And I became more than just his caregiver. I was his daughter again. Thank you, Calvary. Phyllis Robinson.
This is Frank Calamari. With Calvary at Home, experience our unique Calvary care right in your own home. Call us today at 718-518-2465.
Interactive Brokers clients earn up to 4.33% on their uninvested, instantly available cash balances. Rates subject to change. Visit mybkr.com/interest rates to learn more.
It's hard to keep up with all the week's news.
This morning, we are covering two major breaking news stories.
Luckily, you have Sundays to catch up. Starting at 11 a.m. Meet the press.
The U.S. economy is facing a crisis in the banking sector. China appears to be working more closely with Putin.
ABC This Week.
Donald Trump is again calling himself a victim.
And Face the Nation.
We are joined now by the chairman of the House Financial Services Committee.
Sundays on Bloomberg 1130. Bloomberg, the world is listening. You're listening to Bloomberg Intelligence with Alex Steele and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Let's get back now to our conversation about cash-like ETF assets. Bloomberg Intelligence Exchange-Traded Funds analyst Athanasios Serafagis is still with us.
What do these ETFs actually own?
There's really two pockets. One is just the Treasury bill ones, which are owning just 0 to 3-year Treasury bills. That's it. That's pretty straightforward. Doesn't really move a lot. It's not really that sensitive to rate. But there is this nice little niche here where it's actively managed ETFs. They're sort of changing their duration. The active manager will change it based on what they think the market outlook is. So with some of these, you might be able to get a little bit more yield. They are actively managed. They are still really cheap. So you really have these two. You have just the clean cut index ones that are tracking the treasuries, or you do have these actively managed short duration ones.
What other ETFs have you noticed have sort of benefited from the bank deposit outflow? Or is it sort of just relegated into these safe cash-like ETFs?
They're definitely punching way above their weight this year. So most of it has been going into the really, really short-term stuff. But what I've also been noticing starting to happen is money is starting to take on a little bit of duration risk. Now, I don't know if this is investors sort of thinking that, we peaked on rates, the Fed might pivot, but you're starting to see money start to itch out into the intermediate part of the curve. But overall, the trend has definitely been stay on the short end of the curve. Or if it is going into equities, if it's being really conservative, high quality names, low vol names. You haven't really seen chasing of the thematic type stuff or the ARC Innovation ETFs this year. It's definitely been more on the boring side.
So on this cash-like ETF, it's just a fraction the size of what I consider the short and safe stuff, which is just money market accounts, right?
Yeah, in context, there's maybe about $100 billion in these ETFs, which sounds like a lot, but when you put that in context of money market funds, I think they just hit $5.2 trillion recently, so it's still a very, very small fraction. And I get it. The money market funds overall, what's the main benefit about this is that they maintain that $1 NAV, right, which people like. ETFs can fluctuate, right? Now, while you can actually get the performance very close to what you get in a money market fund, most of the money is going towards the money market type fund, only because they don't exist in the ETF form. I'm willing to bet if we did have this type of product in the ETF form, they'd probably be finding their way over there as well.
How many ETFs are there like this? Like, what are my choices?
So let's say the shortest of the short, there's anywhere from 5 to 10. Now, granted, because they're just holding very short-term treasuries, there's not a whole lot you can do there, right? There's not a whole lot of room for active management or doing something different. So it's really just a matter of who can get there first, who can be the cheapest, and who can get the scale. And so some of the bigger products, State Street has one big one. The ticker is DIL, conveniently, and Oyster is another big one. The ticker is SGOV. But again, it's just because it's so competitive, there's not a whole lot of room for movement there. So it's just they're able to get there first and scale up their product.
Yeah, I'm looking at a chart you have in your research note, and the difference in interest rates paid for a checking account, a savings account, and then the money market account. I mean, it's so much higher in a money market account. No kidding at $5.1 trillion. I mean, is that something that the ETFs are trying to compete against, that money market?
Yeah, they are, and it's one of the few areas where they just can't. Just legally, they can't be a money market fund. We can't really call it that. But again, the ones that are mimicking the performance the closest are taking in the most money. So Oyster, which is very, very similar to the Vanguard money market fund, has been seeing the most flows of all these sort of cash type ETFs. And you know, because there's such a spread between the rate that you're getting on the savings and in this fund, I think it's worth it for people to say, you know what, it's worth it for me to transfer my money out into a brokerage account versus maybe the rates weren't, the spread wasn't as wide, maybe they wouldn't want to go through the effort. But now it's obviously pretty advantageous to move your money out and buy one of these funds.
Yeah, and they were talking about also like sleepy depositors are going to wake up to the fact they're making no money on their money and they're going to put it somewhere else, whether it's these kind of ETFs or money markets or either way. Anyway, it was really good to get your perspective. Thank you so much. Athanasios Sarah-Vegas, the Bloomberg Intelligence Exchange Traded Funds Analyst.
That's this week's edition of Bloomberg Intelligence on Bloomberg Radio, providing in-depth research and data on 2,000 companies and 130 industries.
And remember, you can access Bloomberg Intelligence through the Icon Terminal. I'm Alex Steele.
And I'm Paul Sweeney. Stay with us. Today's top stories and global business headlines are coming up right now.
From the financial capital of the world, broadcasting across the globe, this is WBBR New York, Bloomberg 1130. Now, a global news update.
A group of congressional Democrats are calling on Supreme Court Chief John Roberts to investigate luxury trips provided to Justice Clarence Thomas by a major Republican donor. The 16 lawmakers sent Roberts a letter on Friday urging him to look into any unethical or potentially unlawful conduct on the part of Thomas. The letter calls for a swift, thorough, and independent investigation to safeguard public faith in the judiciary system. President Biden is inviting Tennessee lawmakers to the White House after they were targeted with expulsion for protesting on the House floor. Brad Siegel has more.
On Friday, Biden hosted a conference call with Democratic State Representatives Justin Jones, Justin Pearson, and Gloria Johnson. Jones and Pearson were expelled by the state Republican-controlled House Thursday, while a vote to expel Johnson failed by one. Biden thanked them for their leadership in seeking to ban assault weapons and standing up for our Democratic senators. The call also included an invitation to the three to come to the White House in the near future.
China is conducting military drills around Taiwan as the U.S. delegation is visiting the island. The Chinese military made an announcement on Saturday saying the three-day drills are a serious warning against Taiwan's separatist forces and a necessary move to defend national sovereignty and territorial integrity. The drills were announced after Taiwan's president met with the U.S. Speaker of the House in California. The U.S. delegation visiting Taipei has vowed to follow through on delivering weapons to Taiwan. Pope Francis took part in an indoor prayer service on Good Friday that skipped an outdoor Way of the Cross procession at the Colosseum in Rome on gospel orders. The 86-year-old Pope is leading Holy Week celebrations at the Vatican after a recent health scare. Francis was hospitalized last week for bronchitis. I'm Julie Ryan. A new poll says Americans are more and more worried about drug use and affordable health care. Clay Thomas reports.
A Gallup survey shows the number of Americans who worry a great deal about drugs is up 8 points since last year, now 46%. The number of respondents who are concerned about the affordability and availability of health care is up 5 points to 54%. I'm Trey Thomas.
New York City is planning to join an ongoing national lawsuit against Kia and Hyundai for neglecting to install standard anti-theft measures. Natalie Migliore has more. Certain makes and models are being stolen at record numbers in New York City. Mayor Adams said Kia thefts in New York City have increased by 900%. Hyundai thefts have jumped by more than 750%. Blames are on the lack of theft devices in the vehicle. Officials warned that New Yorkers last week about the social media trend that's led to a spike in these vehicle thefts. Adams said, not sit idly by while auto agents and wide eyes to pursue them. I'm Natalie. Actor Jeremy Renner says he now has a metal plate in his head after he was nearly crushed to death by a 7-ton snowplow. Renner was critically injured in January when he was accidentally run over near his home in the mountains outside Reno, Nevada. In a new interview that aired on ABC Thursday night, Renner said he broke more than 30 bones and that metal parts are holding together his eye socket, his leg, and his rib cage. His doctors say Renner has now regained enough strength to walk with a cane. The 52-year-old actor is best known for playing Hawkeye in the Avengers.
Cocaine Bear is heading to a living room near you. The Elizabeth Banks directed film about a coked-up bear will be available for streaming on Peacock on April 14th. The film was a big success and made $24 million in its opening weekend. It stars Kerry Russell, O'Shea Jackson Jr., and Ray Liotta. I'm Julie Ryan. And I'm Susanna Palmer in the Bloomberg newsroom. President Joe Biden vowed to fight a ruling from a conservative judge in Texas that could block a widely used abortion drug. That fronts the issue of reproductive rights right back into the spotlight ahead of the 2024 election. A statement Friday from Biden came as the fate of the pill, mifepristone, remains unclear. The Texas ruling was followed up almost immediately by a separate order that affirmed the U.S. Food and Drug Administration's approval of the drug and blocked the government's unrestricting access. Jamie Dimon says the banking crisis has made a U.S. recession more likely as lenders tighten credit. More from Bloomberg's Shirley Pellet.
Diamond says, quote, we are seeing people reduce lending a little bit, cut back a little bit, and pull back a little bit. His remarks came in an interview with CNN. He says turmoil in the industry will not necessarily force a recession, but he adds it is recessionary. J.P. Morgan Chase reports earnings next Friday, along with Citigroup and Bank of America. Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Radio.
The slowdown will be reflected in earnings, says Torsten Slot, chief economist at Apollo Management.
Think about it. What is the Fed trying to achieve? The Fed is trying to slow down consumption. The Fed is trying to slow down hiring. The Fed is trying to slow down CapEx spending. So therefore, it should have real consequences. In other words, it should show up in GDP growth, in consumer spending, and ultimately in earnings.
The International Monetary Fund warned that its outlook for global economic growth over the next 5 years is the weakest in more than 2 decades, urging nations to take steps to bolster productivity. The emergency lender sees the world economy expanding about 2% over the next half decade as higher interest rates. The gap between the black and white unemployment rate, which is a closely watched benchmark of inequality in the labor market, shrank to its narrowest level on record in March. This as African Americans saw outsized gains in employment. The black unemployment rate plunged to 5% last month, the lowest level in data going all the way back to the early 1970s. It's still 1.8 percentage points above the rate for white American unemployment, which was unchanged at 3.2% in March. But that gap is the smallest ever. Global news 24 hours a day, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in over 120 countries. I'm Susanna Palmer. This is Bloomberg, now Bloomberg Sports.
At the Masters, Brooks Koepka entered the third round with a 2-stroke lead. Tiger Woods makes the cut. The Yankees and Orioles continue the weekend series at Camden Yards. Johnny Brito will be posed by Cole Irvin. At Citi Field, the Mets and Miami Marlins play the middle game of their series. Ex-Giants wide receiver Richie James has agreed to terms with the Kansas City Chiefs. That according to NFL media. James had 4 TD catches last season. The Rangers skate in Columbus. The Islanders host the Flyers. And the Devils visit the Bruins. That's a Bloomberg Sports Update. I'm Oyster.
Welcome to Bloomberg Opinion. I'm Amy Morris. Now this week we'll take a look at the top priority. What should it be for the CDC? Job one just might be regaining the public trust. There is a race among workaholics, and women are starting to gain some ground. We're going to look at why. And we'll take a look at the latest trendy neighborhood. It used to just be called Wall Street. Let's get started. We begin with a focus on oil and whether the past week changes the narrative in a significant way. After the White House announced last fall it would refill the Strategic Petroleum Reserve at specific oil prices. President Biden making that announcement.
The United States government is going to purchase oil to refill the Strategic Petroleum Reserve when prices fall to $70 a barrel. And that means oil companies can invest to ramp up production now with confidence they'll be able to sell their oil to us at that price in the future, $70.
But it didn't happen, and prices are going up again. So what did happen? Let's bring in Bloomberg Opinion columnist Liam Jennings. He covers energy.